So I'm really glad you could put this together, and welcome back to New York. You had quite a trip, and it must have been very exciting and interesting, and we're going to be catching up. We haven't done a program for far too long, and welcome to you all very much once again. It's good to see you. See you all. It's nice to see Rabbi Beck again. It's been a long time, but welcome.
Yes, thank you.
And welcome to you in the audience. Welcome very much to Conversations. A pleasure to welcome to the program three gentlemen representing an organization called Neturei Karta that they're going to explain, and they're people that are of the Jewish persuasion, Orthodox Jewish persuasion, and as it happens, maybe a little bit unexpectedly to a lot of people viewing, they happen to be very vehemently and from a spiritual perspective anti-Zionist in their take on the world situation, and we're going to be talking about that. And if I may just parenthetically say, yourself, you were recently at the conference in Iran and have met recently with the President of Iran, and that's something we're going to make reference to and so forth in the program. There'll be a little footage about that. But gentlemen, welcome very, very much to Conversation, particularly Rabbi Beck. Once again, it's very good to see you and welcome you to the program. On my far left, if I could, is Rabbi Moshe Beck, and he's a person we'd have to say at the outset, he does not really adequately deal with the English language. He will be speaking some in Yiddish, and Rabbi Weiss, who is on my immediate left, will do translation for him. But he's a spiritual leader of the organization. It's a great pleasure to welcome him. I hope he can understand what I'm saying, and we'll just alert the audience to that fact. On my immediate left is Rabbi Israel David Weiss, and he's a spokesperson for the movement. We've talked to him in the past, and David, welcome very, very much to Conversations again. And on my immediate right is, I used to know William, but it's Mordecai Weberman. He's a member of the organization as well. And Rabbi Weberman, welcome very much to Conversation. It's good to see you again. And gentlemen all, welcome very, very much to Conversation. Perhaps we could, because we're talking about something that's a little bit unusual in terms of most people's perception. You are representative of an organization called Neturei Karta. I think it's worthwhile for us to introduce the general audience to the Neturei Karta, what their beliefs are, and what set them aside for a good deal of the Jewish community in the world relating to the question of Zionism. But could you share a little bit of maybe your own background a little bit, and then also particularly the Neturei Karta? What is it representing, and why does it take the position that it does, if you could, please?
With God's help, I pray to God to bestow upon me His wisdom, that I should be able to convey His truth to your august listening audience, watching audience.
Yeah. Let's hope they're august. Yes, yes.
And that they should be able to further disseminate this truth to the world with God's help, and so we can sanctify His name.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We have the you started in the outset. You said that we sort of set a little bit aside from the large populace of the Jewish people. So on the outset, let me just say that we are, I would believe, in the same mindset in a general term and in most issues, in even the issue of Zionism, the State of Israel, and so forth, as maybe the vast majority of people who are religious, who are true to the Torah, in the issue of Zionism.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but on the being outspoken, and in some small details, there we may disagree about the approach and things like that. So let me explain. First of all, who I am. I am, with God's help, I come from religious Jewish parents who were born in Hungary, and they were there God-fearing, and one of my father's rabbis was one of the leaders of the people who were outspoken against Zionism before the creation of the state, even because Zionism is actually not 50 years old, or since the State of Israel. It's really a movement that started in the 1890s or so with the Theodor Herzl, and it was started by non-religious Jews who wanted to transform the concept of Judaism from the religion, from what Judaism is, into a nationality, into a whole different transformation of a whole thing into a materialism, a political issue, dropping the godliness from it, dropping the religious aspects of it, but still using the name of Judaism, and to legitimize what they were doing, they wanted to use the Torah, the Bible, and so forth, to waive that, to legitimize whatever they're going to use under their nationality.
I believe Rabbi Israel Dome in England has written a book called The Transformation, which exactly took up this point, and that's the major thing perhaps that has to be addressed by the Jewish community writ large.
Exactly. So that we have to explain. And Neturei Karta, the movement, it's an Aramaic word coming from the Talmud, which refers to the exact translation is Neturei, the protector's Karta of the city, which was given in the 1930s to the people who are vocal in their outspoken in their opposition to this influx, to this movement of Zionism, because I say Zionism started in the end of the 19th century, and the beginning of 1910, 1920, they started coming in droves into Palestine, the people who were following this ideology of Zionism, and there was a very settled, large community of Jews that were living there for hundreds of years, who were God-fearing, and their whole life was to be religious Jews. They didn't want this new ideology, and they felt threatened, so they formed this God-fearing community, and this was to make a wall in order to keep away this terrible influence.
I wonder if you could set me straight a little bit. If I understand correctly, Theodor Herzl was an atheist in his own belief and so forth, and they had this idea. The Jewish community had been in exile for a couple thousand years for reasons that we could go into, and that there was a condition by which they lived. The Talmud, the Torah true, lived with a sense of identity over all that long period of time, with an idea that had reference to the ingathering of the Jewish people at the end of time, that was really relevant, that helped keep that community together. And there was a feeling, and when first they announced that they were going to pick up and go and start nationalistic and start a state and that sort of thing, it was rejected by the vast, overwhelming majority of all the Jewish people that existed in the world. Am I correct in that?
Well said. Let me explain that. If all the people in the world should have it as clear as you do, then we would be saved from our problems, because as you say, we believe that when God made the contract with us, made a bond with us, the covenant on Mount Sinai, He clearly stipulated that we're going into the land. He's giving us the land, but we have to be on a special level of holiness. And if not, then the land will reject us as the nations before who unfortunately they defiled the land. So the Jewish people accepted this stipulation, and then with the destruction of the temple, we were told by the prophets very clearly that we're being sent not because of our physical inequities. We were sent out of the land because it was God's will, as a punishment, because of our spiritual inequities. And we were clearly told by God that the purpose of our living on this world is to serve God and to glorify God's name. That's the reason of a person's life, to glorify God and to serve Him.
And to keep alive the prophetic tradition.
Well, that is, we believe the purpose of a human being is to serve God and to bring glory to God's name. Now, the pinnacle of that would be when all the world will recognize the one God and serve Him. We believe that, and we pray, and this is what you were mentioning, that we are praying and hoping and yearning for the day when God will say that the time has come through metaphysical changes, that the exile will end, and He is gathering us back in with all the nations. All the nations will come together to serve God in harmony. It won't be through military happening, and it won't be for a state.
It is proscribed
that God will do
this. It will not be done militarily or in the traditional way.
We say in our prayers that the Jerusalem was destroyed in fire, and God will rebuild it in fire. So in other words, it's a metaphysical thing, and we believe, and this is the yearning of every Jew. This is so the concept of wanting a state even after the end of the exile is also wrong. We don't want this materialistic, this political issue. We're not interested in it. The Zionism came around 100 years ago. Theodor Herzl. They, as you mentioned, some of them were totally atheists. Theodor Herzl in his diaries spoke about converting Jews to Christianity because it would be more convenient. He was in Vienna. So their concept was that they said one thing: this is no good. They want to convert they transform it from Judaism, a religion, into a nationalism.
Yeah, and they could say everyone else in the world has a nation. Why can't the Jews?
Why shouldn't we? Because of course they dropped
because
the whole
there is
Torah.
a special covenant that was intrinsic to the Jewish view of the prophetic tradition that you feel has been violated by jumping the gun, as they say in the modern thing, before its time. And it is not in keeping with the truths that are contained within the Torah understanding of this. It's not Torah truth.
It's not. It's totally a different concept. Their thing of nationalism. They shouldn't call it Judaism. But why do they want to use my name? In other words, they're misusing. They're abusing the name of the religion. They should call it. Give it a nice fancy name, a catchy name. Why are they using Judaism? So it's wrong. But they do call it Zionism because they went up to Zion. Zion is Jerusalem, and they're using. Again, why did they go to Palestine? They were thinking of going to different places, Uganda and so forth. It would have been more practical. But they realized they won't have the backing of they won't have the backing of the Jews who they know every Jew yearns and speaks about.
They say that at the Seder, don't they? Next year,
Hoshana Haba B'Yerushalayim, the coming year in Jerusalem. So they started calling themselves the beginning of redemption, and they knew that they counted on the ignorance of the masses, and that way they'll be able to. And they also knew that the non-Jews who also will back, they'll be able to wave the Bible and say, you were in the Bible that God gave the Holy Message. So they knew what they were doing. They wanted to use the Star of David and the signs of Judaism in the name of Jews. Maccabees for the Olympics. What is Maccabees? It was the 5 children of the high priest who stood up against the Greeks when they put a decree against Jews that they can't circumcise the children, they can't sanctify the Sabbath. They were 5 people. It's not possible to win against an army, but God made them successful because...
But isn't it true that at the initial stages they were seen as a radical fringe group, the Zionists, in the early stages?
Totally.
And the vast majority of the rabbis and of the learned people were totally against this idea, as in that idea is in opposition to what the Torah tells of the destiny of the Jewish people within a larger world context.
It is heresy.
It's a heresy.
And it's forbidden. And not only is it a heresy because it's a transformation of what Judaism is, but it's forbidden. It's spelled out in the Talmud that when God put us into exile with the destruction of the temple because we were not worthy of remaining, that He stipulated
for your sins.
And He said clearly, do not rebel against any nation. Do not go back en masse to the Holy Land as a garage group. Do not you should not rebel against any nation, and do not make any attempts standing. And if you will, it will be, God forbid, catastrophic. So we find that you have over 60 years of their attempts, supposedly, of making a good life for the Jews, and you're having death and suffering of Jews and non-Jews alike.
And if I'm not mistaken, they said that, that as you understand it, and whether or not we have Reform, conservative, different things, you're Orthodox, they have different views, so you have different interpretations, but as you understand the Torah lesson of how this is to be achieved, it is to be done within an elevated state. The world would be at an elevated state of universal justice, and that it would be done totally with no military might being exerted in that traditional way of nations fighting one another at all, and it would be within an elevated state. And it does have, to bring up another thing, it did say that this would be led by Moshiach.
So
now that gets a little tricky, but the idea of the Moshiach seems to have gone by the boards, as they say. There was a popular song in Israel, the Moshiach isn't coming, he isn't even phoning. Do you remember that popular song recently?
I didn't hear that song, but that is the way that they ridiculed the Torah belief. Now, it's possible there'll be wars of pride, things that are happening, but the gathering of the people that will be because God will make a metaphysical change, and it says, like it says by the United Nations, there's the Isaiah wall. That one nation will not pick up a sword against the other. They will beat the swords into plowshares, and the sheep will reign with the wolf. So that
is a very different context of the world in which we live now.
Correct.
In this
so
year of 2006 of the Christian era. Right? Or the common era.
Very correct.
So that is a jumping of the gun in a certain sense by reading of the patience that's required to be Torah true in your estimation. And that was the belief of the vast majority of the Jewish community up until the time something changed with the Nazi Holocaust or something of that sort of thing. Does this make sense to you, Weberman? I mean, it makes some sense to you, right? Okay. And so what caused, if I could, what caused the world, the Jewish world, to take a different view than that traditional one that had held them together as a nation for a couple thousand years,
Yeah.
to shift to where so many of the Jewish community and that sort of thing now are totally in favor of this idea of the Zionist enterprise. What
Yeah.
caused that? There was, of course, the terrible devastation delivered down upon the Jewish people by the Nazi
Holocaust,
regime
yes.
in Germany and so forth. But what caused the transformation, do you think?
Well, the ignorance of the masses while the Holocaust.
Uh-huh. The
Well,
masses, the
happened?
Jewish masses?
Jewish masses.
Jewish
Yeah,
masses,
yeah.
masses and
The-
also of the peoples of the world, perhaps? Or is it you're talking
I'm
from
talking
a
about
Jewish
Jewish
perspective?
perspective.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, oh, this is terrible.
It was,
Excuse me, I
it's
thought I
a web
closed
home.
it.
It's the modern technology. You gotta
I
have
closed
this. It's
it.
all right. It
Yeah.
happens. It happens. It happens. But so it was just a matter of ignorance.
Right.
You don't think there was a sense of great existential angst at the so much of the devastation that was delivered down that people would say, for instance, we've been good with the nations of the world, and all there's anti-Semitism built into the consciousness of the Gentile world or the world, and we can no longer allow ourselves to just passively go into the ovens and that sort of thing. We must become strong, and we can no longer go along with this passive idea,
well-
and that sort of, is that not part of the context that was involved in terms of the transformation of the Jewish nation to when the Israel was declared and so forth?
That is what the Zionists use. They manipulate. They use the Holocaust with those type of statements and
It
things
was
like
a
that.
terrible event.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course. I mean, Rabbi Beck
Yes.
himself, he was in a bunker. He was hiding. He was in Budapest and Pest and hiding in a bunker. His mother was killed in the Holocaust. My grandparents and aunts and uncles were killed in the Holocaust. I'm also from Hungary. My father escaped. So we are people who the Holocaust is in our blood. But the Jewish people who died, they died because they're Jews, because they want to serve God. Now, to use them, metaphorically speaking, to use their blood to rebel against God, to desecrate God's name by abusing the Holocaust, by oppressing another people, by causing more bloodshed of the Jewish people and the Palestinian people together. There's an endless river of blood happening because of the rebellion against God by the Zionist state. That is not what they wanted. It's like digging them up and God forbid, and spilling their blood against them again. And so we speak in their name, because in truth, the Zionists not only are they rebelling against God with the state that is forbidden, and God warned us that it will be catastrophic. So we see that what happens, that there's no peace and there's endless bloodshed.
It only gets worse.
It only gets worse.
It's
The
supposed to make
Zionism came.
everybody safe, and it makes them only more unsafe all the time, it seems.
We call it they're the greatest factory of exacerbating anti-Semitism throughout the world. Jews were living in Muslim countries in harmony, in relative harmony of all the countries that before they were human rights groups, the United Nations.
You don't think there was anti-Semitism in 19th century, 18th century, that sort of thing, and it's a thing that had to be suffered by the Jewish people passively and in keeping with that and accepting it with great patience, and it was finally that it got to be to where the people said, no, we are strong, we can be strong.
The anti-Semitism is inherent, we believe. God gave it as like a part of the world, a tapestry, that it should remind the Jewish people that they always have to remind that they're not here for materialism, that they should serve God. In our Shulchan Aruch, our Book of Laws, it says when God forbid there's a plague, there's a earthquake, or there's some type of war or a decree against Jews, and God says it's for us to fast and to be introspective. Think, why is God bringing this upon us? Repent, as like it says in Jonah, the prophet Jonah, that he spoke to the city of Nineveh, non-Jewish, and he came to the king. He said, God sent me to you to this, and he said, and to tell you that he's going to destruct your city, and God, and so the king told all the people, the inhabitants, that they must repent, and look what they're doing there. This is the Jewish concept of the world. This is religion, that we recognize that God is the one who is with every human being in this world. He's controlling the world, and he wants to always remind us to that. That's what that is what anti-Semitism is through the generations. We believe from God to remind us. That doesn't mean that releases the people who do bad things to the Jews or to anybody else.
From
that
any guilt. They got guilt,
But God is perfect.
But that's not your concern. Your concern is to be Torah true.
Exactly. That we have to see why did it happen to us, God forbid, or whatever. Now, Zionism Zionism says that God is not there. They have to have God forbid, and that blasphemous, and that they have to protect themselves. God went to sleep, and so therefore
God went to sleep.
It closed his eyes, God forbid, and things like that.
Yeah,
But in the truth is, we say God forbid. God is there all the time, and
God does not close his eyes.
and He doesn't close his eyes. No such
We've
thing.
closed our eyes to God.
There's a
Is
verse
what
that
you're
says,
saying, and the world has with its
100%.
nationalism and that sort of thing.
In fact,
and there's an elevated higher order that must be kept true to.
Right. In fact, there's a verse that says, "Hine lo yonam v'loishon shem Yisrael." God does not how you say, dribble. He does not think like that, you know. He doesn't sleep. He protects the Jews.
Okay,
So in other words, God is always, all the time, 24 hours, 7 days, is constantly and compassionate and worries about thinks about every human being and about the Jewish people.
There is an elevated order that we can
right.
take into account
But
with these matters of spiritual concern.
Right.
Yeah.
So if God allowed the Holocaust, we have to try to think what, and if we're not prophets, but we try to think what happened, why God allowed this to happen. We have to try to figure out how we can better ourselves and think what happened. Now, the Nazis definitely were responsible. God will avenge their blood of the Jewish people there for but we have to think as far as, like you said, that we have to be introspective. Now, the Zionists say, look, the Holocaust happened, and they use it as an excuse.
They would say because we were weak.
And the irony,
and we must be strong.
The
That's
irony
what
is that they had a hand in the Holocaust.
There was collaboration.
There was collaboration before
the Zionist flag flew in Nazi Germany.
They wanted the Jews sent up to Palestine. There's 51 documents from Lenny Brennan.
Lenny Brennan, I know him well. I've done programs.
Then we have a letter that not only that, but there's a book called Holocaust Victims Accused. I have that book here.
Okay.
Where in 1943, when the Jews were being slaughtered in England, they had a meeting at the Parliament, and 270 members of Parliament put forth a plan to take the Jews into their colonies. And the Zionists say, wait. They said only to Palestine, and the British said no, we can't do this. They said so they evacuated they vacated the plan
because they had a plan.
Right. So
they had a nationalist plan, a political plan that they wanted to implement.
And they said to the Parliament. So the Parliament said to them, look, if you don't want to help your own brethren, then what do you want from us? So it was because after the war they blamed the British for being complacent. The British and the head of the rescue from the Jews under the chief rabbi put a letter into the London Times or Guardian. We have it, and he said, "Don't blame Britain." He said, "You're the ones who did it," and nobody was able to dispute that fact. And then in 1944, 1945,
you can understand Rabbi Beck somewhat a little. You're getting better with the English. I know. Because we did a program with you about 12, 15 years ago with Mr. Barghouti's office. I remember it well, and it's very good to see you again.
In 1944, 1945, when the Nazis invaded Hungary, Rabbi Weissmandl of West Germany, the head of a whole area, Nitra, went and approached the henchmen of Eichmann, and he made a deal that the Jews would be bought off they were desperate for money, and he made a deal with Eichmann that they should stop killing the Jews, and he was going to buy them. So, and then in order to have money to buy them, Rabbi Weissmandl approached the Zionist organizations, and they thwarted his efforts, and he wrote a book about that. They were caught. They said they don't want these Jews. I'm going to quote, I think it's necessary, Chaim Weizmann, the first president
of Israel,
and really the father of the state of Israel, the one who arranged the white papers with the Balfour Declaration. He said like this in 1938, and this was from a Jewish press, Friday, October 18, 2002, and it's in his writings, Chaim Weizmann. He said, Palestine cannot absorb the Jews of Europe. We want only the best of Jewish youth to come to us. We want only the educated to enter Palestine for the purpose of increasing its culture. Educated, he didn't mean Torah scholars. He meant the secularly learned.
Scientists,
The other Jews will have to stay where they are and face whatever fate awaits them. These millions of Jews are dust on the wheels of history and may have to be blown away. These millions of Jews. We don't want them pouring into Palestine. We don't want them pouring into Palestine. We don't want Tel Aviv to become another low-grade ghetto.
Another what?
Low-grade ghetto.
Low-grade ghetto, yes. Low-grade.
He didn't want a Jewish
shtetl.
This was the mindset of Zionists. So they were complacent, and not only complacent, but they had responsibility. They had a hand in the destruction of Jews because all Hungarian Jews could have been saved. So my grandparents, Rabbi Beck's mother, all these Jews could have been saved. And then in Britain, as I say, millions of Jews would have been saved if it wouldn't have been for the works of Zionists. Why did they want the Jews saved? They said, Rak Badam, they said the more the Jewish blood is spilled, the conquerors the victors will distribute the spoils, will give land, and if there's more Jewish people killed, then they'll have more pity on us. They'll give us more Palestine. That was it was killing two birds with one stone, because they didn't want the Orthodox Jews who opposed them to come in. So the
Orthodox Jews were still opposing them.
Of course.
Did Rabbi Shearson or the Lubavitcher ever oppose Zionism and then switch when things became practically able to be, and why? And and there's just the Neturei Karta is left in terms of this traditional view that is maintained against the great odds, against a great deal of the world that sees you with great infamy and so forth. They tend to, the Jewish population, right? You were subject to that.
So let's put this, not the whole world, because the Zionism was opposed, like you mentioned before, by worldwide, but all the rabbinical scholars throughout the world. And Schneerson dynasty, which is Lubavitch, were prolific writers of Shalom Dovber, of blessed memory, wrote very strongly on Zionism. And in fact, the last rabbi, who was very controversial, never said that he's a Zionist or stood up for the word Zionism, but he said that the safety of the Jews is in question here. Therefore, we have to support not returning land.
That's like they're saying that now.
Right.
And that the safety of the Jews is an existential thing. We have to support the state of Israel because that's the only chance they have to protect the interests and the lives even of the Jews who are being beset by terrorists and people who are against them for reasons of inherent anti-Semitism is the point they will make.
Now we say to them, that, which is many Jews throughout the world, who say, listen, that's just fear-mongering, the fear, like creating panic amongst the Jews, the propaganda of Zionists, because in truth, there's more death and destruction because of the state of Israel, and the fact is that we were always living in peace and harmony with the Palestinian people and with the other throughout the Arab
Some people would take exception to that. They say they were the Islamic world treated them badly as second-class citizens.
They say that dummies. We were second-class citizens in many Arab lands. If you're not a Muslim, you're a dummy. That means like a second-class citizen. But who cares? So we couldn't serve in the military or whatever it was in each country.
That's a good thing, not to serve in the military. Who wants to serve in the military?
But they let us practice our Judaism. That's the whole point. As a Jew, as a religious Jew, we have no problem as we can be good Jews, practicing Jews, but we don't believe that Judaism should be transformed into a democracy, into an issue of that they want to be the heads. And
much of the world has gone secular, as they say, in the modern world. The modern world is one where there was traditional held by the religious traditions were there, but everything's gone secular with the age of the nation and so forth. So many of the Jewish people who would have studied Talmud or Torah will now study medicine or literature, and they will go secular, and they will go. You don't have any opposition to that.
Do
you understand what I'm saying?
Two things that you said, like people who are there's religious people who who are professional people. That's not a problem. Secular is a whole different story that you put in there.
Well, those are secular. No, those are secular concerns. I mean, instead of studying Torah, you will study the legal books or the medical books or the scientific books and do scientific research. And people become more and more secular through time in the minds of many people. And that's a problem of modernism on the part of a whole lot of people who've lost their spiritual roots. It's not just Jewish. It's also a great deal of the human society. Look at China now. They're all going materialistic and that sort of thing with 1 billion people. It's a problem of the modern world.
That's a problem.
But you have a model that one could be referring to that keeps true to spiritual traditions that are meaningful on a universal tableau, right?
Exactly. And but you can be, in other words, that you could. It's not. You could be a person, with a profession and things like that, and be a practicing Jew. Just the transformation, dropping the Judaism. That's where the problem. And then let's get back to what the people were speaking about because of the fear we shouldn't return the land. But that's not true because we say to them, if you can live throughout the world as we Jewish people are living in the United States and throughout the world, and being a practicer, you see that that's a false. It's a propaganda.
There was a problem.
Let me just finish that. In other words, you can live throughout the world, be a practicing Jew, and you don't, and you can't, and just say that I must rebel against God and have the state. God says to you, you don't feel you're afraid of the Arabs over there, so move out. Don't make a rebellion. Don't be a continuous rebellion against God by continuing the state because you're afraid. Move out if you're afraid.
Okay, but
it's not even true what they're saying.
Okay, but there was anti-Semitism directed against the Jewish community. They had country clubs you couldn't join, that sort of thing in America, and there was gentleman's agreement. All this kind of thing.
So what is the solution?
So what is the solution?
The solution is the Jewish way. It's the Jewish way.
Okay, well the Jewish. worth taking
Right.
consideration
The Jewish
of.
way
I think
is-
there's a lot to be said for the Jewish
Right.
way.
Now
yeah.
we were told in the Torah, Jacob went to his brother Esau, but he wanted to kill him, and he brought him presents, and he tried to placate him. And we were taught that this is a command for the exile, that throughout exile that were from God, we are told that we should never go militarily, even though over there it says that he prepared. Militarily means that we should prepare
Now,
to escape.
is
In other
that-
words, the approach is. In other words, there's two issues. We have
Yeah.
Zionism, that we're not allowed to have a state,
Yeah.
our own country, our own entity, and there's a second issue that even to-
Until it's time.
and then again, not a state. Then we will have everybody unified and serving God, not
Yeah.
a state.
Uh-huh.
Now, but wait. But there's another
Okay.
concept that Zionism has spoiled and put in poisoned the minds and the thought process of the Jewish people throughout the world. That we have to stand up against people. That concept is
Stand
even
strong. They want to be
that
strong, not
concept
weak.
is
Yeah.
against Judaism. In other words, even if it wouldn't be a state of Israel, the concept that if somebody wants to do us bad, God forbid, that we should
We should
stand up
maybe hit
military,
them back. huh?
that is non-Jewish.
That is
That's
non-Jewish.
approach. The Jewish approach is you should go to them, try to placate them,
Maybe
pray.
reason,
First of all,
maybe
pray
think, yeah.
and repent, see what's wrong, and then go to them and say, look, what can I do? Why are you against us? And so forth.
And what can we do to make the world so we don't have to do this nonsense to each other?
Right,
Perhaps
right.
make the
That is
world
the
more
Jewish
just.
approach.
That's worthwhile maintaining, no?
To repeat that, to say,
Yeah. No, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can, but I'm saying that that's a thing that's worth keeping. That's an attitude of a peaceful kind of way that can be based upon reason,
Right.
justice, and so
and that will
forth.
be successful.
And
because-
that's what the world needs in order to
Right.
be able to get to the elevated state where this end time might be realistic. And what about the concept of the Mashiach?
right. Well,
Whatever
believe-
happened to the Mashiach? How
Right.
are they going to do an end time thing when there's no Mashiach? Isn't that kind of a big issue?
Well,
Ben
again-
Gurion is not Mashiach.
No. Well, we believe that when he will come, we're not going to have to prove to anybody who Mashiach is. When the time will come, there will be a metaphysical
Talk
change.
to it. It's a big issue.
Right, so
and
we'll
a lot of
explain-
people say
yeah.
Mashiach doesn't matter because
Right.
that's just all that legend. and it
Maimonides
doesn't-
says,
you know.
Maimonides explains, he says that
But it's
when
kind of central. It
right,
seems to
when
me.
we believe, like I said, we're not going to have to convince anybody with the Uzi or a fan that this is Mashiach or this is the
A
end of time.
tank.
A tank.
A big tank.
A big tank or something.
Atomic bombs.
Right.
Yeah.
What will happen is when the time comes, there will be a metaphysical change. There will be a different
Yes.
spirit in the world.
It'll be an
and-
elevated
and
order.
And there will be
Yeah.
a person who will come and bring the hearts of Jews to repent and the world to recognize the one God. That will be, and then we recognize the Mashiach. And we're not, Maimonides writes that we shouldn't even be busy thinking and trying to...
We should be busy to making a just world
Right,
that
and
will
not-
make it possible
and
for
not
that to emerge.
To be
Yeah.
busy exactly how it will be, because we can't understand, because it will be a change, a
Yeah,
metaphysical change.
it's a
But that's the
mystery,
Jewish
yeah.
concept.
Right.
But like I say, there's definitely the approach that we have, like the opposite
Neturei
of,
Karta, you're
right,
talking, yeah.
opposite of what Neturei Karta, as I always say again, Neturei Karta is only the voice of the many. I would say the
That's
majority of
interesting.
religious Jews who are afraid, who are intimidated, afraid to speak up because of Zionist
Do you think
attacks.
there are other
This
people
is the voice of that.
Yeah.
And we say that let us approach the nations, not like the Anti-Defamation League and Abe Fox, who will always says, you got to apologize, and they apologize.
Right.
We're going
well,
the other way.
there's political space to be made by taking that attitude and building upon the guilt and that kind of thing. You can make political space for a movement by taking
But,
that
and
attitude.
it's wrong. This is
No,
non-Jewish.
right, so
It's
other
against,
people take the same
contrary,
thing.
antithetical to what Judaism
Now, would
tells
they
us to
say,
do.
would there people in that realm, that spiritual realm, Foxman and that kind of thing, they would say, what you're saying is contrary, what you're doing is naive, you just don't understand the real world, and you can't allow that kind of an attitude. There's no reason why we cannot, like everybody else, exert our influence on the world and have our authority understood and
you
respected.
see, what they consider that they're brilliant and they know
Yeah,
what the
they've
real world
studied a lot of law
is
books.
because they don't realize that God is brilliant and more than them.
Well, they
tenfold. And God has a different plan on the world.
But can
so they won't be successful. They're looking at it through a peephole, and they think that they're smart and they're think tanks and they're going to come with the solution. That's why you have the hawks and the doves of Israel, and everybody says, "Oh, this way is going to be successful. This way," and nothing works for over 60 years. Why isn't it working? Because it's not God's will. It's not God's way. It cannot be successful. The approach going against God and saying it's the real world, and they scoff at us and belittle us. We say to them, "Okay, you're doing your way. See what you're accomplishing." But even if they would
it
accomplish,
only becomes more dangerous all the time.
and even if they would accomplish, we would say to them, "But you're still wrong because you're rebelling against God. Don't speak in our name, at least. It's not Judaism. Judaism is
What
told,
is it if it's
dictated
not?
by
If,
God."
if you're going to disclaim the idea of Mashiach or the prophetic tradition or the Torah, why not just do away with the whole idea of any God or anything at all? Why
But-
not just be totally secular like everybody else,
Let
and
them say what they
let's
are.
get in the fight, and we'll be
Right.
strong, and we're smart.
Why are they pulling us into their
Yeah.
quagmire, into their dirt?
That's the way you see it. There are a
Right.
lot of people within the Reform, not just the Orthodox, you say religious Orthodox, but people that are in the Jewish community at large, that
Right.
have these attitudes, but maybe they're sub rosa, and most of those people will, at least at the surface, after all, you've got a state that's Jewish, and if you're Jewish, you're going to tend to be associating with that, and there was a great respect for it after, in the 50s and that sort of thing. But a lot of people in the world, other than the Orthodox Jewish world, that also might have in a closet kind of way or in a harboring kind of way, sentiments is similar to what you're voicing outright and into
Right.
the world.
Many people share our view who are non-religious. And the religious, I say, there's definitely, hundreds of thousands are true to that because they have the same teachings that we have. They have the same Torah teaching. It's clear what the Torah view is in Palestine, throughout the whole occupied Palestine, throughout the Holy Land, throughout the world, and it's logical also, like you say. But I've always we're always a little bit hesitant to get into what's logical because we say even if you don't understand it, do what God's will is because this is the Torah. This is what we have to do.
Okay, now we're in a world now where this is the year 2006, right? And we got a thing, and you people have just I know you, and I think Mr. Rabbi Feldman and some others were just visiting the camp of the arch enemy in the minds of a lot of people, Iran.
Right.
You took a visit to Iran. It was very much in the news. We're talking on what is this? January 11th, 2007. So you were there and so forth. You got that kind of thing, and those people are taking a different kind of view from the one that you take, and what are we to say to them in terms of the geopolitical and the realities in the world, and particularly there's Iran that's going to go and there's making statements about destroying Israel and that kind of thing, which feeds into the paranoia that people feel, which is existentially loose in the world. You got weapons that can destroy the whole species and so forth. We're in an existential, challenging time and so forth. What do you say to those people who take that view and say you must be strong to protect what we've got?
Again,
and then the ramifications in Iraq and so forth as an extension of American power behind Israeli. Yeah.
We're going to fall back on that. First of all, who the almost the entire media, besides your channels and IRIB and maybe Al Jazeera, different things like that, these people are with malicious intent falsely portraying what's going on in the world, falsely portraying what Iran is and President Ahmadinejad. They're trying to make them into evil and agents against, and people against the. They are not, and we're very clear. They are not people who hate Judaism, hate the Jewish people. We have the statement.
They hate Zionism.
They're against Zionists because it's evil.
They don't hate the Jews.
Exactly, and the Zionists maliciously, and they put out a statement that the President Ahmadinejad said that he wants to wipe off.
Was that a misquote?
And that is a misquote.
It
Jonathan
is a misquote.
Steele in the London Guardian has a whole issue about that. Quan Cole, a professor in the University of Michigan, said that he spoke in Persian.
Something was lost in the translation.
He said
they're very poetic. That Persian
and
language.
He said
it's very poetic.
It is, he said it should disappear, just like we say that we pray every day.
That is different. Yeah,
it's called as a transitive verb. He said it should disappear because God, it's evil, and God doesn't want evil. And he spoke to us. We spoke.
I could say the nation state might disappear in a new order where it doesn't have any meaning. It's disappear because they got all these systems out of history that are outdated and a new spiritual order and that kind of thing.
And that's what we said. We have these comments that was put out after we sat with him for an hour and a half in Iran, and he said through dialogue, the chief executive, and there's a statement put out by the Iranian president's office, and it says
you met with him here recently in New York
for an
When
hour.
he was here,
were
you there at that meeting?
And exuded.
You were there
Rabbi
at that
Beck
meeting?
was there.
Was Rabbi Beck there also?
Yeah.
With
the President
Ahmadinejad?
Ahmadinejad here when he was in New York, and he spoke. Rabbi Beck spoke in Yiddish. Did
you find him a good gentleman?
He was
very
tremendously
gracious,
warm.
or what?
He was gracious. He was warm.
That's
and he says, Rabbi Beck says, I hugged him. We hugged each other.
You hugged him. Did you like him? Did he have a good Hamish? Was he Hamish? Was he warm?
Hamish, yeah.
Was he good? A good feeling.
I like all people the world.
No, in Yiddish you can speak.
They are friendly.
He was very friendly. He said he was very friendly. You saw it. and he spoke about he has nothing against the Jewish people, and on the contrary, he respects the Jewish people. And we would
What's there
discuss
be against the Jewish people? The Jewish people are beautiful. I
God's
think.
help.
Yeah, no, it seems that. But more, you met him and he was logical, intelligent, made sense.
Zeigeldik is was werkte geweest.
Ja, ik weet nog, ik mijn gerge zeigelige werkte geweest.
He said very intelligent comments. That's what he said, which we
And wise.
Is er geween Krieg? Is er geween
Ja, ik mijn gerge gesagt.
He spoke to the point. He spoke logical, and that's what he's saying. In other words, that is what we're talking about. The person he clearly spoke here. Like say, if there's a statement that was clearly from their office, so you can't refute it. He said the problems facing the world, including the Palestinian issue, has to be settled, solved through dialogue and the necessity for peace, and paying attention to the prophets' instructions.
All right. Yeah, that would be good.
And then he said
the prophets, and they're of the book.
Right,
They believe they're of the book.
He said the fake Zionist regime was established based on lies. It should either pack up and leave or hold a free referendum to establish a government based on the will of the Palestinian nation, which includes Jews, Christians, and Muslims.
Well,
he further stated, while the fake regime of Zionism has set up a large prison in the occupied territories of Palestine for the Muslim, Jewish, and Christian residents, they lay claim on human rights and freedom. He said one other thing, let me say, the president, referring to the opposition of faithful Jews who believe in the instructions of the prophet Moses, in reference to the crimes and stance of the world Zionism, Ahmadinejad said the vigilant and just human beings will not blame the Jews for the crimes committed by the fake Zionist regime and its supporters in the occupied territory.
He wants to make a distinction between the Jews and the Zionists.
Including
the Zionists is another thing. That's one thing.
But the Jews, he said, vigilant and just human beings will not blame the Jews for the crimes committed by the Zionist regime and in the occupied territories, including the genocide of defenseless and oppressed women and children. He said, no matter what they do, the terrible crimes, we throughout the world, just people will not blame the Jewish people. Now, how could you say that he said that they should wipe these Jews off the map?
Well, it's called spin. There is spin, and there's that, and people have a certain agenda and so forth, and people look at the situation and they see the Muslim world as a threat to the Israeli-imposed the Zionism and so forth, and so they have to deify the enemy.
Demonize.
They demonize, and they did it with the American Indians. They said no Indian, good Indian, only good Indian, dead Indian, all that sort of thing, in order to assert their own political control.
And what exactly?
And that is seen. Is that seen in Iran or in the Arab world or in the Muslim world or in the broader world as an example of a European-based Western colonial attitude toward the other peoples of the world or not? Do they see Israel as a representation of European colonial control, the way the British exerted colonial control, or is that relevant or not?
Well,
and is there a reaction against that? We got, Nasrallah in Lebanon and that sort of thing, and that there's a real standing up to the idea that Israel is able to assert itself, maybe ideas of greater Israel, all these kind of things as expansionist Western colonial conquering of the peoples of the world by Western people, and they see the Israeli example as Western European colonization.
Right.
And is that an issue that has geopolitical significance as we begin to look ahead?
Oh yeah. Well, Rabbi Beck said to me that I should be very clear and state. He said that the Jewish people throughout the world are forbidden to mix into politics per se. They have to be just practicing their religion and and we are supposed to be and required to be loyal in every country we're residing. So when
there's a lot of politics in Israel.
Now, exactly. Now the concept, in other words, to try to dissect and to understand, the different like geopolitical things, effects of what we're reluctant to that, but we will say that Zionism is definitely looked in the Arab world and the Muslim world as responsible for creating havoc, and that they're responsible and through in Palestine for certain, and throughout the world, and of course what they've done with Jewish people throughout the world. They've created a rift between Jews throughout the world. They've created and they feel that people who are in support of Zionism, it's because of the Zionist propaganda,
arrogance, maybe,
and false statements, and that they're trying to vilify the other people who are standing up against it, like
Right.
we're doing with the
And if I may, I'm an American. I'm not Jewish. I'm Episcopalian. I'm sorry, but that's just the way my background is and everything. But I got a feeling for it. And you've got backing from the United States, which is a superpower that made Israel possible. It couldn't have happened without $3-4 billion a year going steadily to that for anything that they want, weapons and that kind of thing, superpower status. There is a reaction, perhaps against the Israeli venture, by it might be 1.4 billion Muslims. You got to give the Jewish people credit for chutzpah, that they think they can go among 1.5 billion people and go with a couple of million and set up a thing and stick their thumb in their eye and say, you will submit to our power because we are better people, and that people are not going to at some point react to that in a way that has meaning. If they react to that significantly, the masses of the people of the world, not well served by the political leadership now, if they react to that against Israel, that could have ramifications against the United States, because people are rising up all over the world against the political order that's in place, because we need a political order that will make it possible for universal justice and perhaps the appearance of the Mashiach and all that kind of thing. Do you understand?
I understand what you're saying, but you're saying that we should give them credit for chutzpah. It would be a nice joke, unfortunately, but unfortunately, it's the chutzpah is causing. Why is it chutzpah? Because it's dangerous, and the result of this danger is that people are dying. Jewish and non-Jewish people, this blood is pouring like in rivers.
Yeah, but maybe in the divine pattern or something was necessary for there to be something, because the real power in the world is the United States of America, and the United States of America perhaps does not have a vision adequate to serving all the people in the world, and this may be a way in which they've got an ally that's joined at the hip, and they will be able to bring a challenge to the basic assumption that the United States of America represents historical legitimacy, when there has to be an altered system, and it has to be woken up to an altered system to the one that we advance with our Israeli ally, and that is wrong. Like, as soon as Louis XVI was out of date in 1789, there's something new needed in the world, and our leadership coming from the Western world is not giving that vision to the world, and the world needs that vision, and maybe it'll start coming from a reaction from Iran or from some place where they have a vision that is adequate to what is required for the whole of the people, rather than just a few. If you understand what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying, but again, politically, we always stand back and say, look, politics is forbidden for us as Jews to do that, to get involved in the politics of but I can say that many of the United States of American people are good people. The vast majority
most people in the world
are very good throughout the world, and they mean. And unfortunately, Zionism tries to tell them that they have that they should support them because of sympathy and because of the threat and the Holocaust,
anti-Semitism,
and they bring up the Holocaust. And now we emphatically stated at the conference there that the Jews
in Iran,
they were in Iran
just a month or so ago,
that there was these maybe more than 6 million Jews killed in Europe. We're not going to get the whole issue of the numbers, but all the Jews were eradicated, unfortunately, from Europe, and so we said, but to use that to intimidate a people.
Why don't we give them Bavaria?
Well,
that's what Ahmadinejad. I mean, it was the Germans who did it. Give them Bavaria. Why take it out on the Palestinians? They didn't treat them particularly badly, the Mufti or something. But
exactly what he said. And he said, why are they paying for it? That's why he made this conference. He said, why does the Palestinians have to suffer? That's why we went there, because the whole issue was about that the fact that the state of Israel is abusing the death of the people in the Holocaust. Abusing it.
I know, but they're using it in a sense of spin.
Right. And they're saying that because of that, people, if you can speak up, you see you're anti-Semitic in the Holocaust, therefore we have to have the land.
And if you say you're anti-Zionist, they say you're anti-Semitic. They trade in that.
Exactly.
But it's smart. It's smart PR, no?
That's true. They're efficient and they're good. But what they're trying to accomplish, but it's evil. Now what they're trying to do is, like we said, how ironic and how tragic and how terrible this is. We say in Hebrew, you've killed and now you want to inherit. In other words, they had a hand in the Holocaust. Spiritually, God warned us that we will be God forbid it, punished if we will stand up against him. And you had like many reasons. One of the reasons was that
you go secular. You're forbidden to go secular in the way they've gone. Exactly.
We don't understand exactly what happened, but we understand that people were punished. We believe from God. There was secularism. People wanted to assimilate in Germany, and from there Hitler came and said, "Was your grandparents were practicing Jews? Doesn't matter. Your grandparents were Jews. You're secular now." It didn't help to become secular. Then you had the people who took up the Zionist movement, which God warned us: if you will try to leave exile, it will be
ahead of time. Where's Mashiach again?
And you will be hunted like animals.
Yeah.
And we find that in the Holocaust, Jews were hunted like animals. They were made into soap bars. They were made into bags.
Other people have been treated that way also throughout history. Half the population of Libya was wiped out by Italians. Holocaust. But why do we call it the Holocaust rather than the Jewish Holocaust? There have been other Holocausts. Other people have suffered.
There was genocide of all the ways. I think the Holocaust terminology I've heard, I don't know if it's true. I don't know. The Zionists coined it after the 6-Day War. I'm not certain. But genocide on lands have been unfortunately over. And there's
a distinction between a Holocaust and genocide.
I don't know.
That's something that should be gotten down.
I said the word Holocaust was, I think coined, they said. But whatever it is, humanity, whenever they suffered,
half the population of Libya was wiped out.
And by the Holocaust, it was tens of millions or whatever.
But if you're trying to get a corner on the market of suffering from bad anti-feelings about your group, then you would want to have it made unique and apart from all the suffering that's happened. What about the slaves? What about the American Indians that have been wiped out en masse? That was nothing but a Holocaust. Why do we call the Jewish Soros the Holocaust, when in fact there's been a Holocaust delivered down on people throughout the history of mankind? That's what I'd like to know. It was special. They want to keep it special.
Possibly, and whatever it is,
and maybe it was. I don't know.
Whatever the Zionists did, but one thing we're saying: our parents, our grandparents, our relatives, and all of Judaism that was wiped out, they died to sanctify God's name. They don't want to be used to rebel against God, to oppress another people, to do another unjust.
Now they're conservative and reform and so forth who will say this thing about the way you're arguing about the Torah and all that. That's all just past stuff. It doesn't matter. What matters is the geopolitical realities in which we're in.
Well,
now.
again,
this is all just past stuff that you shouldn't be concerned.
What they say doesn't matter because they don't. I mean, they don't. They let them say in their names, not in the name of Judaism. They cannot represent Judaism because, like they say, they're reforming the Judaism. They're not the Judaism.
But they do represent institutions that have great ability to raise money and to get tanks and to get military power and exert and all that kind of thing,
but
as
again,
opposed to
they don't represent. We're here to express what Judaism is and what Judaism is about and what Judaism says you are rightful for and not rightful. Zionism has no right. These people who had a hand in the destruction of Zionism, how terrible this is that they're using now the Judaism to say, give us the land, and they were given the land, and now to intimidate anybody who speaks up against them, who wants to question Zionism and the right of oppressing the Palestinians. They're using now we were saying something, just a small point here, that in the United States, all the people are good, but they feel that they're supporting Jews, and they don't realize that by backing Zionism, they're helping to exacerbate anti-Semitism, and it's against God, it's wrong. Let them support Judaism by helping the poor people, if they want to give help, to live in the United States and to live in Palestine, but not
let the people, by letting the people who are now in Israel come to the United States, are you talking about? Is there pressure that's going to be exerted on the basic premise of the existence of the state itself? Or is that something that is to be considered? Could we set up the Sixth Fleet and let people be expelled or brought back?
That's not the point. That's
not the point.
Because
no point in thinking that way.
No. Because we are certain
they could go to Bavaria.
We are certain. If somebody wants to go, let them go. And we.
No, I mean under pressure of 1.6 billion Muslims who really put pressure. Like Nasrallah's up in Lebanon.
We don't believe that will happen.
You don't think it will happen?
Not because we've spoken to many of
you don't think the order that is run by the world that is run by the Bush administration in the United States of America is ever going to be questioned in terms of the fact that they have an overwhelming power that all the world must bow down to? Like the Arabs must bow down to the overwhelming power of the Jewish ability to exert their power with their 200 atomic bombs and tanks and so forth, that they're not going to have to there's not going to be any force to come against that system that's in place that is out of date.
Well,
with what
God
is
help
required.
us that God help us that first of all that they shouldn't have such power, the Zionists.
But they
And
do.
I don't know if they have such power, but they
But
have.
they're seen. They want to be
but
seen as
unfortunately-
invincible. They're not being seen as invincible now
right.
since Nasrallah.
Right, and
Right? And
they're
it's creeping-
creating anti-Semitism. People say, look at those Jews, look at the power they have, and they don't even have as much as the PR they have.
And
now,
the
wait,
United
and
States is
Nasrallah,
behind them.
You were speaking on Nasrallah. These people we've been in Lebanon, we've met with leaders of different group organizations. We were in Iran, we met all over. We've meeting with
You've been to
Palestinians.
Iran, yes.
Yes, we met with Palestinians, and they all these groups, they all say one thing: we have nothing against Jews, and we are certain. Of course, it's their will, it's their prerogative. If they take, with God's help, there'll be the end of Zionism. We pray through speedy and peaceful.
You want the end of Zionism. What does it
and
mean?
the end of the state of Israel.
Wait a minute. What does it mean, the end of the state of Israel? What
It
does
means
that
we
mean?
pray
If it doesn't
a
mean
dismantlement of the state, but not to the
dismantlement.
death of the Jews, God
not the
forbid.
death of the
No.
Jews, but
And
what's
we've
going to
spoken-
happen if I may? You got the
Yes.
thing with the wall. You got all the guns.
Yeah,
Oh,
a change of Rabbi Beck says a change of regime. In other words, it should be under the rule of the indigenous people, the Palestinian people, and we are certain that we would ask them, please allow us to live amongst you. If they won't, God forbid, then we'll have to pick up our pekluch, we say our suitcases, and move to other places, because we have to be loyal in every country we're residing. But we are certain that knowing the history, the testimony of history, that they don't want to throw out the Jews. They want them to live side by side, as President Ahmadinejad said, under the rule of the Palestinian people.
So what would happen?
So that would happen.
We had some tape and stuff. We haven't got a chance to get in. We're out of time. We have to talk and everything. But if that were to happen, then what would be what would be in what is now called the territory of Israel and the West Bank, much less the greater Israel that's projected by some of the neocon, really radical fringes and that sort of thing. What would be the situation in that part of the world if there is the end of the state of Israel?
I'll tell you what would happen.
That's the term
I'll tell you.
use.
Not right now. They're digging up graves because they want to make an extension to Highway 6. The Israelis, they're beating Jews constantly. Jews are dying, and Palestinians are dying. With the end of the state, you're going to find peace, and we're going to be able to coexist. And they won't be digging up our graves. They won't be desecrating the Sabbath.
One more time, just visitate this idea: the end of the state.
The end
of the state of Israel. You're
Correct.
saying.
And
now, what would there be in the end of the state of Israel? What would exist, say, in 10 years or something, if the state of Israel ended?
There will be a peaceful land, a holy land that will be living in harmony. Jews, Muslims, Christians will be living together and with God's help in a peaceful coexistence as we have been doing for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Would there have to be a new way in which the world itself is organized in order for there to be a peaceful condition among all the people? You're speaking just about the Jewish-Israeli thing and not the whole world.
Well, of course, but
we may be at a time where the world need elevate to a way where you have universal justice, which you haven't had out of
That
history.
is what we yearn and pray for, that the day should come with God's help, with the whole world should. We pray every day for that there should be peace in the world, that everybody should recognize, go on God and serve in peace. That is the yearning of a real Jewish perspective.
I think that's the yearning of every peace-hearted and well-thought-out person of the world, and it's really it's particularly relevant now because the destructive capability is so Promethean now, beyond where we can wipe out the whole species, which would be a bad idea.
Right.
To wipe out all the species in order to protect some outdated idea coming out of history, but it may be a time of transformation of the whole of the world, and it's that context within which the end time of the Jewish tradition, as I understand it, is to be unfolding. So we have to create a world, but the leaders of the world now, who have the guns and the weapons, do not have a vision, and something's going to have to bring the world to that vision.
We have a strong God.
You have a strong God.
We have called prayer.
Okay.
We pray to God and we have dialogue, and it will work with God's help.
Okay, well, it's a good thing. I only got a couple minutes left. We're just closing graphics. You want to say anything quick here, Weber?
He left Story left nothing to say.
He left nothing to say.
Rabbi Beck, say a minute or what do we have?
We're just running credits, really. We only got 30 seconds or so.
Ich wundere mich, wie geht versteht die ganze Sache.
Rabbi Beck said he's astounded by how well you understand the whole situation and our the points of Neturei Karta.
If only I did. I wished I could. I'm very confused by all the mishigash in the world. There's so much mishigash.
Ich kann nur sagen kurz, wir tun nicht anerkennen die zionistische Medien. ihre Keimel nicht anerkennen, weil sie machen eine andere Sorte jüdische Volk.
We said we just want to say in short that we don't recognize the Zionist state of Israel, and we will never recognize it because they're making Judaism into another people, into a different people.
Well, I don't recognize the power of the people who claim power in this world now, and there's some new elevated order that's needed. It's going to come out of public access, and people like you, we've got to inform and create another world other than that which we've inherited out of history that these guys do not have a vision adequate or to future requires. Thank you for having contributed to a condition where that might occur. We're trying to fight